I'm trying to get back. With all the good done run out, I'll be giving in my best. This is nothing gonna stop me but to find intervention. Break in my turn to win some or learn some, but I won't hesitate no more, no more. It cannot wait, I'm sure. Hey, yeah, yeah. Open up your mind, see like me. Open up the plan to tame your faith. Look into your heart and you'll find love, 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 love. Listen to the music of the moment people dance and sing. We're just one big family. It is so God forsaken right to be loved. Love, 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 love. So I want me in my word. No, I'm not perfect, but I hope.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to our webinar this morning. Please confirm if you can hear me in the chat by saying hello. Just type hello in the chat if you can hear me. Okay. I can say hello from Muhsin. Okay. So welcome to our great webinar, everyone. If you are here with us, I can see some people with us. Just go and type something in chat. Just type in chat. Just type in chat. Type something in chat. Just type where you are joining us from this morning. Good morning, Aziz, Odekule. Good morning. Okay, good morning, everyone. So today we'll be talking about understanding the typical data lifecycle in any business. So we understand that we also need to focus on the data aspect part. That is why we are bringing this interesting topic to you this morning on our Power Platform webinar series. This is our sponsors here, down here, Power BI UG, Power Platform User Group, CFA, and then we are also Microsoft partner. So in D Brown, what do we do? So basically, we do trainings and consulting. So we help organizations achieve more with their data. We do a lot of trainings related to analytics, financial modeling, and then productivity. And we also consult on the same thing. We consult on financial modeling and analytics and then other business process automations. So our main sponsors are D Brown Consulting, FPN, Finance Professional Network, CFA Institute, and Office Training Hub. We also have a platform called Office Training Hub, like I said. So this is our LMS platform where you can actually do a lot of online self-paced courses and then improve your skills and supercharge your skills seamlessly with our platform. So if you are yet to go to our platform, we have some free courses there that you can actually jump on. Please go to officetraininghub.com and then look at some of the free courses that we have to get started. We have this interesting methodology where we do 2 hours in each section for different courses. So what we do in the classes is we look at the participants, we review them, check their skills, then we assess them. After the assessment, we get some expectation from them by registering them on our LMS, and then also do a lot of interactive section with them in the classroom. Then after the classroom, we don't leave our participants. We also do something called application, just to check how our participants are actually applying what is being taught in the classroom. Our master trainer, David Brown, FCA, Managing Partner, D. Brown Consulting, and Consultant, Nigeria Governors Forum, is the Managing Partner of D. Brown Consulting and is one of the hosts for this webinar that will usually happen every Thursday. My name is Adewale Yusuf. I'm a business intelligence analyst and also a trainer at D. Brown Consulting, Microsoft certified trainer. I lead the Nigeria Power Platform Oyo user group. I'm also a Microsoft MVP and a Microsoft MCT. So I am moderating this session today, and then I'm happy that we can join us. Please, if you can hear me now, can you type something in chat? Just go and type something in chat, hello, or tell us where you are joining us from this morning. I'm going to introduce our master trainer this morning, our speaker, Mr. Speaker. He has a lot of experience when it comes to data and analytics, when it comes to business process automation. This person is very good when we talk about anything data, right? Anything data. And that's why we think that is the perfect person to actually speak to us about data this morning. His name is Muhsin Hameed. He's a BI and a trainer, and also a Microsoft certified trainer. He's also a Power Platform app maker. He's a Power Platform developer with, among all other certifications. So his name is Muhsin. I also have Babatope here with us today. Babatope is also here to support us to make sure that things are actually working smoothly at the back end. Thank you, Babatope, for joining us. Muhsin, are you with us? Good morning.
Yes, I'm here. Good morning, Wally.
How are you feeling today, Muhsin?
Oh, very well, Wally. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for the introduction.
I'm sure a lot of people are excited to actually see what you want to show us about data, because to me, basically, I think a lot of people seem to jump into analytics, they jump into data engineering, they jump into data science without understanding the real fundamental of data. And that's why most people get it wrong. Or what do you think?
Yeah, exactly. That's 100%. Many times people just want to learn the data tools. They do not begin with the data fundamentals. And it's not really their fault. Sometimes people come to people like you, Wally, to say, oh, Wally, I want to start my journey in data analysis. So, Wally, I believe you would have some courses, you have some guides for them at the foundational level to say, oh, this is what you need to begin with. But a number of other people out there, they just say, oh, go and learn Excel, go and learn Power BI, go and learn Python. And then they begin to learn those without the fundamentals, and eventually it's all no show.
Interesting. I think it's sounding interesting already, and I think this webinar is going to be very interesting for us to be here. Please kindly sit tight and let's listen to Muhsin. Please, over to you, Muhsin.
Okay, thank you very much, Wally. I so much appreciate the warm reception. Thank you very much, everyone who has joined the call this morning. I've been introduced already, so I don't need to go over that anymore. And I really do appreciate Babatope, Wale, David Brown for availing us this opportunity to always bring this to ourselves every third Thursday of the month. And also I appreciate our audience, the attendees, those of us who are on this call this morning at this time. Thank you so much for making it a date with us on the platform. Before I go right in, I have a quick poll for us. And it's just so to have an idea of the spread of our audience. The poll is up now. I want to assume that we can see the poll just for us to respond to that. How much do you work with data? How much do you work with data? Is it just 10% of your work requires data, 30%, 50%, or your entire work actually depends on data? So quickly, let's respond to that so that in a way I'm able to understand our audience this morning. Okay, you can see the responses are coming in. So in some seconds, 30 seconds thereabout, the poll would go down. So let's quickly attend to that, please, everyone. Okay, so it's looking like most of us on the call, we have our entire work dependent on data. That sounds very interesting, and I believe so much of the concept that we will be discussing this morning will be things that probably in a way we already know, but we need some refresher around it, or we want to understand what are some of the best practices around some of the things that we'll be discussing this morning. Oh, I can also see that some of us, we just do a bit of data. 30% of our work is dependent on data. That's still fine. So I do believe that everyone actually needs to work with data, but these are some of the things that we would get to understand as we go on into the session today. So the agenda for the conversation today, will have an overview of data lifecycle. We'll talk about data generation, collection and storage. How are we expected to visualize data? What is data analysis itself? How is it done? And actions. How do we derive actions from whatever analysis we run in our organization? And of course, we'll have the opportunity to ask our questions, seek clarifications about certain things that are not clear or seem ambiguous, and some of the stuff. So those will come at the tail end. So as the conversation go on, please let's ensure to pen down our questions. Let's ensure that we don't lose track of the things that we need to clarify, so that when we eventually get there, the time for questions and answers, we would just put those forth, and we would be assured of getting responses to our questions. What we're talking about today is how is the typical data life cycle in a business. We want to understand the typical data life cycle in a business. What we're doing is not essentially discussing the concept, but we're doing a description of what it is or what it should look like when we talk about the data lifecycle in any business. That is what we're talking about today. So we may not be doing so much technical things. Of course, probably we're not doing anything technical, but what we're trying to do is to lay the foundation, so that those of us that we are already in the space, we understand that probably there are certain best practices or recommended practices, as they would say, that we are meant to actually put into use within our organization while we're dealing with data that perhaps we are not doing yet. Or some of us that we don't do much with data, we could actually get to understand certain things better when it comes to re-rolling and working with data. So those are the things that should form the background to the conversation that we are about starting now. So let's go straight in. So when we talk about the data life cycle, as we know, everything that so exists as a life cycle, when for people that are coming from agriculture background, so maybe we study something related to agriculture, or we are dealing in the agricultural space, we would understand that even when we cultivate plants, there is a life cycle. There is a seedling point. There is when it starts to germinate. After then, it starts to fruit, and then the harvesting stage. All of this, that forms the life cycle. And eventually, after there are fruit, and the farmers have harvested all the fruit, then the plants has reached the end point, the end of the cycle. So it has a life cycle. So also human beings. We humans, we have our life cycle too. There were times that we were just toddlers, babies. At a point, we grew up, we became, teenagers, became adults, and then we continue to grow old till a point that we cease to exist. So there is a life cycle there. So also data. Data is meant to have a life cycle. And when we talk about the data life cycle, because for whatever thing you are doing with data in the organization, in your business, there is usually an aim. There is an objective for what you're doing. You are not just running analysis for the sake of running analysis. There is a reason for that. Maybe your line manager has asked you to find out something. This C executives, they have asked you that, oh, we need information about this thing. How can we get this information? How can we get to understand our business better? So there is a request. There is something you want to find out. There is something you want to affirm in the business. That is why you are running whatever analysis you are running within the business. So that would define the kind of life cycle that data is meant to have. And the data life cycle is what we have put together here to say that we are coming from data. That is the foundation, that is the basis. Because whatever you're doing or we're talking about as regards data life cycle would definitely have to begin with data itself. So it starts off with data. And from data, we are meant to get some information from that data. Some things will become evident when we begin to, run analysis on our data, work with our data. Some things will become obvious to us. We get to see some pictures, some things happening within our data. And after getting some of this information, then we need to ensure that we complete the life cycle by running it into insight. Many times people stop their analysis on information. Yes, they didn't mean to, but because they felt that that should be the end point of the analysis, so they have stopped on information. We'll get to see what informations look like. And then after then, they actually do need to drive the information down to insight. It needs to get to insight. That is when you have completed the data life cycle. And that is what would be looking at some of the things that you'll be doing in each of these phases. So these are 3 phases. The data phase, there are certain things that you would do there. We have the information phase. There are a number of things you'll be doing on the information phase. And when it comes to the insight phase, you are expected to actually do certain things that will drive those insights. And there are some post-action after you have those insights driven already. So these are the phases that we're going to focus on in the course of this conversation. So let's begin with data. So when we talk about data, we understand that data is everywhere. It's no news anymore. On this call today, we have data already. There is data around some of what we are doing on this call now. But may I ask us, what do you think, as we are on this call now, what do you think are some of the data that we can actually generate on this call as we are now? Could we just go to the chat and type something? What do you think are some of the data that could be generated on this call? If I give us an example, I could say that about myself facilitating this training now. Okay, Babatokwe, thank you, number of participants. But facilitating this training, I could have certain data about myself to say, okay, maybe this is my background, this is my preference, a number of things about myself. Hours spent, the number of hours to spend on the call could be something that might be interesting to us. Okay, Taiwo says number of participants, interesting. We could say number of participants and then even drill down into saying that what is now the breakdown. If we now want to drill down into our participant, we want to see the spread. How many males, how many females, a number of the, Abimbola, duration of the training, excellent. How long will this training go? That is data around what you're currently doing. Gabriel, number of participants, hours spent, location, excellent there, Gabriel. Location is key around what we are doing at the moment. Okay, now we are using a platform called Webinar Jam. Does that influence attendance? Does it in any way impact how we deliver on our webinars and some of the things? Range, number of females and male, location, excellent submissions here. Data is everywhere. So if you think deeply about whatever you are doing at any point in time, you would realize that there are certain elements of data around whatever you're doing. Even when you're sleeping, there is data being generated. So usually around all businesses, whatever business, whatever thing we are dealing in, we would see that there are elements of data around it, and we can always generate data. But when we now drill this down into businesses, corporate businesses, organizations, businesses do have what we call data systems. And these data systems, they are the systems via which organizations generate data. For instance, we are a manufacturing company. Let's assume we deal in manufacturing of probably some machineries or stuff. In our business, we could have certain systems that would assist us generate data that we would eventually make use of in our business to make some data-driven decisions. So we have those things to be called data systems. Data systems in all organizations have been categorized to be two. We have what we call operational systems, and I want us to understand this clearly. Operational systems. What do we mean by operational systems? What we are saying is that these are systems that organizations, businesses, they deploy to execute their business operations. They use them to execute their business operations. For instance, the example I gave earlier about we running a manufacturing business. It could be that in our business, we have a business process such that whenever we have our client place order, there are certain number of steps that needs to follow that order being placed before we get to the level of delivering the service or delivering the product to the customer. That is a business process. The customer places an order, then the sales individual or the sales executive he enters that order, documents it, and after that it generates a voucher, a PO, or stuff, and then the customer pays, the finance acknowledges. After the finance and account have acknowledged the payment, then they send it to the supply chain department. That is a complete business process. Some organizations would have a system that would manage this, because we need to know that at this point, many organizations are not doing things manually anymore. So there's a lot of digital transformation within businesses. So, and this digital transformation has led to a number of organizations adopting certain systems to run their businesses, which one of the systems that they use are called operational systems, which can be used to manage the example or the flow that I've just described, to manage the entire flow. That is an operational system. On the other hand, we have what is called analytic systems. Operational systems, they are excellent. They are very good, but they have their shortcomings. Shortcomings in the sense that they do not allow you 100% to evaluate those processes. You may not be able to say that, okay, this set of processes that we are running as our business process, we want to see what is the bottleneck. We want to see which of the processes is inefficient. We want to see which of the levels in this process is taking the least time or taking the most time. Some of these salient questions might not be answerable by our operational systems. So that is a shortcoming with the operational system. And that is one of the shortcomings that the analytic system has come to address. So business would need an analytic system. Analytic system to analyze the operational systems, one. And secondly, an analytic system that would analyze whatever data the operational system is generating. Operational systems, when we use it to manage our business processes, we would be generating a lot of data from there, because typically it is assisting us to manage whatever we have as our business transactions. That is what operational systems is managing for us. So when it manages those transactions for us, the data is generated and sent out and then absorbed by the analytics system to now begin to run certain analyses to further understand what is happening within the operations that has been conducted by the operational systems, and then also to further derive certain insights beyond what the operational system has given out to us. So two systems in all organizations: operational systems, analytic systems. So with what I've explained about operational systems now, so what do we think are some of the examples of operational system? Let's type that on the chart. Operational systems, what do you think are some of the examples? I can give us an example, straightforward. Probably something like, let's say one-page CRM, for instance. One-page CRM, sales department, they use it to manage their clients. Usually, the company's client, they manage it using one-page CRM. Okay, that's an operational system, because in a way, what they're doing is that they're using that to manage the deals as they are coming in. So someone requested for certain thing. Okay, Someone requested for certain thing, they entered it into the one-page CRM, and then they are monitoring the progress of that as they are progressing. So that is an operational system. Okay, Abimbola said e-trees. Okay, so e-trees would have a sort of an ERP system, and then probably that is what they use in managing the process. So when you go to when you get into the E3, for instance, you might go to the salespeople. You have placed order. Okay, this is what you want. They generate a receipt. The receipt is sent to the account individual, and then you pay there, and then a confirmation is sent back to the sales, and then they dish out whatever you have placed order for. So there is a sort of a system there as well. Okay, e-commerce, definitely they have operational systems. It could be plugged on Oracle. Maybe that is what they're using to manage the side of that particular business. Okay, excellent. So now we understand what operational systems are. What are examples of analytic systems now? Examples of analytic systems. Systems that you can use, or people use, organizations use to analyze operational systems, or to analyze data that is coming from the operational systems. What are examples? Let's put that on the chart as well. What do we think? What do we think are examples? I will give us some examples, but I just want, based on the explanation I've given, I'm sure it has opened our minds to some things, and so we have certain examples around those already. Power BI, business progress. Taiwo, maybe you wanted to write something, business intelligence or stuff. So Power BI, yes, it's one of those tools that people use to analyze businesses or analyze data. Excellent. So let's quickly look at some of the examples of the system. So operational systems, we have some off-the-shelf systems, some ERP systems. Those are systems that are used at the enterprise level. So you subscribe to certain products, and then you use those to manage your operations. So Dynamics is there. Microsoft has Dynamics 365, Swapcard, Oracle, SAP, Zoom. These are operational systems. So you think about Zoom. Zoom, you use it to manage webinars. You use Zoom to manage. It could be the platform you use to manage your trainings. If you are a training organization, you could use it to manage your meetings internally. You will realize that when you're done with your meeting, for instance, Zoom will give you an attendance report. That attendance report, you can do some analysis on it to say, okay, you want to get or you get some information generally around the people that attended your meeting, how long did they stay in the meeting and stuff. These are some of the things that you could get from those operational systems that, as we did mention. Okay, yeah, Taiwo. So business intelligence too, excellent. So, and then when we talk about analytic systems, we have some self-service BI tools like Power BI, your Tableau, your Looker, a number of BI tools out there. They assist you to analyze your business processes, okay? Or they assist you to analyze data coming from your business processes or your business transactions. So those are some of the tools. And of course, Excel, you can have some custom systems too. And our Excel is perfect for that. Although in some organization, Excel stands as so some people, they build certain systems within Excel that's more like an ERP system to manage certain operations, and then they further connect it, plug it onto certain analytic tool within Excel, maybe your pivot tables and stuff to analyze whatever data is coming from the other side of the Excel that they have used as their operational system. So this is the overview of whatever systems that organization have. Operational systems and analytics systems. Operational systems to execute business processes, analytic systems to evaluate business processes. When we now get data from operational systems, for instance, data is coming from the Oracle side of the operation system, or data is coming from Swapcard, data is coming from Zoom, data is coming from SAP and stuff. We need to now store the data. That is what we will do next in our organization, because we need to store it such that people would be able to access it from that storage. not having to go to the back end of the operational systems. We want to ensure data availability to people that need to actually work with that data. So we need to store it. So whenever we now want to store our data, there are two ways basically people deploy to store data. It's either we are storing our data on premise. And when we say that we are storing our data on premise, what it means is that our data is sitting locally within our organization. Our data is somewhere, okay? Within the four walls of our organization, our data is somewhere there. That is what it means by on-premise. It doesn't typically mean that we are looking at the data physically. No, what it actually does mean is that the data is somewhere within the organization, not outside. So which means that if someone is working remotely and then needs to connect to that data that is sitting on premise within the organization, the person may not be able to do that directly. Okay, that is the meaning of that. There might be certain access that needs to be given, to be granted. So that's what it means on premise. The other way is when you have your data stored in the cloud. Your data is sitting on the cloud. Maybe you have subscribed to certain enterprise cloud storage providers, and then you have your data sitting there and you are able to access your data anywhere. So that is actually the advantage of your data being on cloud. So, but these are the typical ways organizations store data. It's either your data is sitting on premise within the organization itself, or your data is sitting on the cloud. So let's look at some examples of the on-premise data storage. On-premise data storage, it could be that you have just an hardware somewhere in your organization. You have an hardware, or you have an external drive, or you have, just a device that you're using to store your data. Whatever data you are generating within the organization is being fed into that device. That is an on-premise data storage example. Or you have some local servers within the organization, or you have even a designated computer upon which you are rolling all the data that you are generating within the business, or you are using some other devices. So those are some of the on-premise data storage examples that we could have in whatever organization. Then when we look at the cloud storage, so it could be that your data is sitting on Dropbox. I know some of us are aware of Dropbox, or you're using OneDrive or Ice Drive, or you're subscribing to some enterprise service providers when it comes to cloud storage. So probably you're subscribing to Microsoft Azure, or you're subscribing to Amazon Web Services, just so that your data is sitting on the cloud and you are able to access it anywhere. So these are the two ways. Your data is sitting locally within the business, or your data is sitting on the cloud. So now organizations will decide how do they want to store their data. If it is an organization that most people in the organization are working remotely, the better thing to do would be that they have their data stored in the cloud, and so that all employees are able to access the data wherever they are. But if people are working in the, physically in the organization, they could have their data stored on premise, and then someone manages whatever storage they have. But even at that, it is actually still advisable to have your data stored in the cloud. Many things could happen to whatever devices you're using to store your data on premise. But regardless, what we're driving at is that, look at the flow again. Your data has been generated, coming from two systems, coming from operational system, and then you are now storing that data, whether on premise or you're pushing it to the cloud. So after your data has been stored, that is the data phase of things. You have your data generated already, and your data has been stored properly. That is the data phase. Then we now want to go into the information side of things. The information is the second phase. Like I did mention when we started, that after data, you need to get to information. And when you get to information, there are a number of things that would drive that information. But before you even begin to talk about information at all, we need to ensure that our data is structured. Yes, you have your data stored somewhere. It doesn't guarantee that your data is structured. It may be that a data steward, his job is just that, pull data from our operational system, push it to the cloud, or pull data from our operational system, push it into our data storage. That is his own job. So he has only done his job. He has only stood up to his responsibility by pushing the data onto the cloud or pushing the data into an operational an on-premise device. But now, as someone working with the data, you need to now ensure when you want to begin to work with the data that is coming from the data storage, you need to now ensure that your data is properly structured. So how do you ensure that the data is properly structured? So we have at Data Consulting, we have some rules, some set of rules that you need to look at to see that your data is structured. If your data, whatever data set you're working with, if it doesn't follow the 7 golden rules of data management, know that something is wrong with your data, and by implication, something will be wrong with your analysis. If one of these is not fulfilled, one of these rules has not been met within your data or on the data set that you want to work on, know that eventually there'll be something that will be wrong when you begin to run your analysis. So on the information phase, you need to ensure that your data set follows this set of rules. Let's look at the set of rules quickly, and I would want us to take note of this quickly, please. Rule number 1 says you should have 1 row of heading. That is rule number 1. You are pulling a table, for instance, from your SQL database, or you're pulling a table that's already sitting in Excel. Maybe you want to plug it into, analyze it, and then you're plugging it into Power Query to do some cleanup. One of the things you need to ensure is that your data is having 1 row of heading. Look at the data set we have on the left. Okay, we have a title, sales data, and under it we have region, market, store, which are actually meant to be the actual heading there. Region, market, store, and stuff on that row is meant to be the actual heading. But that sales data that you put at the top, whatever transformational tool, ETL tool that you are using, might assume that it's actually confused now. Which one is the heading? So it will take the first one probably to be the heading, and then the first row to be what you have as your actual heading. So one of the things you need to ensure to do is that you have your data structured like what we have on the right part of the screen, having just a single row of heading and nothing is coming above that heading. This our sales data here could be the file name. You could have that as the file name or the worksheet name if you're working in Excel, but you shouldn't have that somewhere around the headers, so it doesn't confuse the ETL tool that you have 2 headers there. So you should have 1 row of heading. Rule number 1, 1 row of headings. We'll have a review shortly around this. Second rule is that you should not have empty rows within your data. Verify that you don't have empty rows within your data. Sometimes for some reasons, there could be skipped rows within the data and you have something completely empty like what we have here, completely empty like this. That would impact your analysis. And in fact, it could imply that it's more like you're breaking your table into 2, okay? More like you're breaking your data table into 2. So you should ensure that you do away with whatever rows, empty rows, fully empty rows that you have on your data set. And if you look at what we have on the right, you would see what we have here are empty cells. Don't confuse empty cells with empty rows. Shouldn't confuse empty cells with empty rows. It is possible that when someone is recording certain transactions into the data set, they do not have full information about what's happened around that transaction, and that way they left some cells blank. Okay, someone does not have information about what model was sold, what line of business was that transaction made in, and then what the category. The person did not have this information, so it's not a crime to have empty cells within your data set. But what is a crime is to have completely empty rows and you still retain that within your data. So rule number 2, you shouldn't have empty rows. Rule number 3, just the twin to rule number 2, you should not have empty columns. Don't have empty columns within your data. The same thing that would be assumed of you having empty rows within your data is what would happen here now. So you're having between your column D and column F, column E completely empty, top to bottom, completely empty. No, that's not fine. You shouldn't have something like that. But just like I did mention, you could have empty cells as well, which could mean that maybe the person did not have those information and left those blank. It's fine. So when you get to you transforming the data, there are ways of dealing with those depending on how your data is and what you want to derive at the end of the day. So rule number 3, you shouldn't have empty columns. Again, rule number 1, don't have more than a row of heading. Rule number 2, you shouldn't have empty rows. Rule number 3, no empty columns. So rule number 4, you shouldn't have obstructions around your data. Don't have obstructions around your data. How do we mean obstructions around your data? It's you adding certain comments that are not or would not add value to your analysis really. It shouldn't be part of your analysis. So you are just looking at the data set and saying that, okay, look at this row now. Oh, this transaction, excellent. We made so much revenue there and you put excellent. This one, we need to verify this transaction. This one, this starts. No, don't have something like that around your data. These are some of the things that you could refer to when you are doing when you are reporting the results of your analysis. They are not actually meant to be on your data file. So ensure that your data file has no obstructions around it. Rule number 5 is that your dates should be in a single column. All your dates should be in a single column. So if you have transaction date, all of them should sit in a single column. Don't have them like this. You have your date somewhere under store, another date is under market, another date is under fiscal period. Don't have your date scattered in your data set like that. Your date is one of the critical things that you will need for whatever analysis you are running. So you need it to be structured properly. And one way to ensure that your date is structured is to have your date in the same column, in a single column. So that is rule number 5. Rule number 6 for data management is that every unique data must have its own column. Every unique data must have its own column. What do we mean by this? So if we look at column A, region, for instance, we are talking about region. That is a unique data. It implies that everything under region has to speak to region. So we are talking about region. What we expect here should be north central, northeast, northwest. If you're talking about regions in Nigeria, so those should be the regions. You shouldn't have something under region that will be speaking to states. You shouldn't have something under region that will be speaking to local government. If you need information about state and local government, create their separate columns for them. That is what this is saying. So if I go to my revenues column, I am expecting that everything that I would see under revenue should be revenue. I shouldn't have unit sold figures under revenue. That is not proper. Okay, so you should have unique data type must all have their own columns. That is what rule number 6 is saying. And then rule number 7 is that every unique okay, so this heading was repeated, but rule number 7 is saying that you shouldn't have totals or subtotals in your data. No totals or subtotals is accepted in your data. You could have totals or subtotals on your report, but on your data, what we're talking about is that you shouldn't have it on your data. No totals or subtotals. But at this point, let me quickly ask us this. What do you think would be the impact of having totals and subtotals on your data when you analyze? What do you think will be the impact? What do you think will be the impact? What do you think? Just think about it. Your data has totals already. Your data has subtotals already. How do you think this would impact your report or your analysis? Okay, it will result in generic figures. Okay, that's close to you, Taiwo. Thank you very much, Taiwo, for that. So when you have totals and subtotals within your data, what would happen is that your figures would, I don't want to say your figures would be doubled, but your figures would not be accurate eventually. Yes, Akim, the total and subtotal will be taken as part of the data. Okay, Makbul, there must be one type of data in one column. Total subtotal will have an impact on total amount. Excellent. Yes, the actual total will be misinterpreted. Gabriel, thank you so much for that. Your actual total will be misinterpreted because you already have totals within your data. So when you ask your analytic tool, maybe you are using Power BI or Tableau now, to now give you a total of revenue, you'll find out that your figures are just, your figures are just overbound. Your figures are just outrageous. You're getting something, and then you're presenting to the management. The management is thinking that no, you can't say that these are revenue. We know the worth of our business. How exactly could we have made 1 billion naira? But the actual total revenue could be maybe something 400 million or thereabout. But you are reporting 1 billion because you did not take care of the totals and subtotals that are already in your data. So you should ensure that your totals and subtotals are taken off, they're gotten rid of within your data. You shouldn't have those within your data. So these are the golden rules of data management. When you ensure that your data follows these rules, then you are ready to begin to glean information from your data set. And then that is when you now go into the data visualization. Data visualization is what most people jump into immediately they want to begin their analysis. They just plug to whatever data set they want to analyze and begin to plot charts and visuals on that data set, which is not usually going to give them the best result. You need to first ensure that your data is properly structured before you now go to visualizing your data. So now we want to visualize data. What are the things that we normally use to visualize data? What are the things that we normally use to visualize data? Let's type on the chart. We just want to have a review of this, and then we quickly talk about some of the recommended practices around visualization. Let's type on the chart. What do you think? What do you think are the things that people use, analysts, they use to visualize data? What do we use? Okay, Power BI, okay. Yeah, Power BI is a tool actually. Power BI is a tool. So, tool for analyzing. Okay, Google Data Studio, Power BI, Tableau. Okay, maybe I didn't phrase the question properly. So, when we talk about analysis generally, or when you want to visualize, okay, pie charts, excellent, Taiwo. When you want to visualize, there are certain things that people use, and those can be categorized into two. So we have the tables and we have the charts, okay? We have tables and we have charts. Those are what people use typically. But example of chart is what Taiwo did mention, pie chart, okay? We have a number of other charts that we can use to run analysis or to visualize our data. Let's mention a few. Taiwo has mentioned pie chart. What other charts do we know or do we use to visualize our data? What other charts do we use or graph? Okay, column chart. Okay, column chart. What other one do we use? We have seen pie, we've seen column. Tree map, okay, great. Bar chart, histogram, excellent. These are some of the charts, okay. Some bars, map chart, interesting. Heat map, these are some of the charts that people use. Also, people use tables, okay? People use tables, people use charts. Tables could be your matrix table, it could be your normal table, depending on the analytics tool that you're using. So tables and charts, basically, that's what people use to visualize data. But before we proceed, let's look at the quote from Edward Tufte, okay, so that we understand what should be the focus around visualization. Thank you, Gabriel. Donut chart, statistic chart, and all. Edward Tufte said, and Edward Tufte is one of the leaders when it comes to data visualization. He has a number of works around data visualization. We can look out for that online. So in one of his quotes, he said that graphical excellence is that which gives to the viewer the greatest number of ideas in the shortest time with the least ink in the smallest space. Graphical excellence is that which gives to the viewer the greatest number of ideas in the shortest time with the least ink in the smallest space. That is graphical excellence. So now, what does this mean? This implies that the goal of visualization is to communicate something, which is ideas. You want to communicate information. You want to give your audience certain things that are inherent within your data. They may not be aware of those, but you want to make it evident to them. You want to make it obvious so that they understand what is happening within your data. That is the goal. And then you want this to happen in the shortest possible time. You don't want them to flip through a number of Power BI report pages. You don't want them to flip through a number of charts in Excel or a number of visuals in Tableau before they get to those information that you want to communicate to them. And you're trying to do this with the least ink in the smallest space possible. So if it is possible that they are just looking at a single page and they are getting all information that you need them to be aware of, that is graphical excellence. So this is what Edward Tufte is saying. So, and this should form the background as to whatever thing we are visualizing. So you're visualizing something, you need to ask yourself, what are the key things that my audience would want to see? Or what are the key information they want to be in the know of? Or what are the key things I want them to be aware of within this data set? Those things should now be thought of and then put in the smallest space possible. Not that you are clogging up your visuals, no. But if you use the least possible space for your visual and you ensure that it is communicating the most ideas. If your report could go in 4 pages, don't extend your reports to go in 8 pages. No, that is not graphical excellence. That is what this is telling us. So now, because our time is running out already, we have 10 minutes to end the session today, 9 minutes actually. What we have looked at now, let me just summarize. We have the remaining part of this webinar, I think is something that we'll discuss probably at other times so that we don't rush up things. So we started with data life cycle. That is what we are looking at. And I did mention to us that the data life cycle is in 3 phases. Let's quickly type the 3 phases on the chart. The 3 phases that we have in the data life cycle. Let's type on the chart quickly, everybody. What are the phases? Let's have a review, okay? What are the phases, the 3 phases in the data life cycle? Interesting. Data, information, and insight. Thank you, Taiwo. Gabriel, data, information, and insight. Interesting. That is the life cycle. And we have looked at data. So under the data phase, what you will be doing is data gathering, data collection, and you're storing your data properly. That's what you're doing in the data phase. So in the information phase, the start point for it is when you are trying to ensure that your data is structured. In a way, this could actually be part of the data phase too, to say that your data is structured before storing. But if that was not done, you need to ensure that it is structured when you're starting to now work with that data set. So that is on the information stage. And it is on the information phase that you now want to begin to now visualize your data. We have looked at the quote from Edward Tufte, and I did mention that summarily, people use tables and charts to visualize data. So in the next webinar, hopefully, some of what we'll be looking at now is what are the best practices around visualization? And then how then do you turn whatever information you are getting from your visuals, how do you turn them into insights? So that is what we would be looking at subsequently. So at this point, let me have our questions in case we have certain things to clarify. Thank you, Dr. Wali. So if you have questions, please let's know if you have questions so we can take those before we call it a day. Okay, so Aziz, which site can one get a freelance data analysis job, either paid and unpaid, for someone that just started in order to build confidence? Freelance analysis job. Okay, what I know of actually is I know there are a number of freelancing platforms. So the likes of Fiverr, Upwork, and stuff, which I would advise you explore. And as well, you could just do some Google search. Hopefully, you'll be able to get your hands on something on those platforms as well. So yeah, and even from LinkedIn, there are a number of firms around. There are a number of firms around that probably would have some opportunities to also work with them for people that are starting out. So you can as well reach out to them to if there are such vacancies. I don't know if that answers your question, Aziz. Okay, Abimbola, is it possible to be a data analyst with the knowledge of Power BI alone? Abimbola would say no to that. And the reason why I would say no is that Power BI is a tool for analysis. Power BI is a tool for data analysis. So it is not in itself what everything about analysis. Some of what we have discussed now, we have not talked about any tool at all. We are just talking about things that people would do or things that people are meant to do when working with data, regardless of whatever tool they are using. So there are some foundational concepts that we need to be aware of if you actually would want to get a good hang of data analysis. These are some foundational concepts you need to be aware of. So you need to ensure that you learn the foundational concepts very well, properly, digest them well. Then your analytics tool, Power BI, is fine, but I would still always advise that you pick Excel as well. Pick Excel, learn Excel very well, know Power BI if that is your preference, know it very well as well. And you may also need to know one of the query languages, database query languages, maybe SQL, any of the SQL variants. It could be MySQL, it could be PostgreSQL, Transact SQL, and stuff. So if you know one of those, then it will better position you for data analysis roles. So not just for Power BI. Even when you want to be a Power BI developer, you still need to have ideas of all of these I've mentioned, because in a way they would come in handy in your surgeon. I don't know if that answered your question, Bimbola. Hello, Babatokwe, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much, Muhsin. I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, I can hear you. I don't know if you have any more question. I think I've answered to what I can see.
Yes, definitely. And I think you have an offer for them as well.
Um, okay. Okay, Abimbola, that's great. That's great, Abimbola Aziz. You can confirm also that you have your question answered before we close out.
Okay, all right. So thank you everyone for joining us for today's edition of our monthly webinar, and we hope to see you next month. That is third Thursday of the month at exactly 9 a.m. That is West African time. See you then. Thank you once again for joining us.
Thank you.